Words of Sri Aurobindo. Integral Yoga and other paths. By divine realization is meant the spiritual realization, the realization of the self, Bhagavan or Brahman, on the mental spiritual plane, or else the over-mental plane. That is a thing, at any rate, the mental spiritual, which thousands have done. So it is obviously easier to do than the supramental. Also, nobody can have this supramental realization who has not had the spiritual. It is true that neither can be got in an effective way unless the whole being is turned towards it, unless there is a real and very serious spirit and dynamic reality of sadhana. It is true that I want the supramental not for myself, but for the earth and souls born on the earth. And certainly, therefore, I cannot object if anybody wants the supramental. But there are conditions. He must want the divine will first, and the soul's surrender and spiritual realizations through works, bhakti, knowledge, self-perfection on the way. The central sincerity is the first thing and sufficient for an aspiration to be entertained. A total sincerity is needed for the aspiration to be fulfilled. By transformation, I do not mean some change of the nature. I do not mean, for instance, sainthood or ethical perfection or yogic siddhis like the tantrics or a transcendental chinmaya body. I use transformation in a special sense, a change of consciousness, radical and complete, and of a certain specific kind which is so conceived as to bring about a strong and assured step forward in the spiritual evolution of the being, of a greater and higher kind, and of a larger sweep and completeness than what took place when a mentalized being first appeared in a vital and material animal world. If anything short of that takes place, or at least if a real beginning is not made on that basis, a fundamental progress towards this fulfillment, then my object is not accomplished. A partial realization, something mixed and inconclusive, does not meet the demand I make on life and yoga. Light of realization is not the same thing as descent. Realization by itself does not necessarily transform the being as a whole. It may bring only an opening or heightening or widening of the consciousness at the top, so as to realize something in the Purusha part without any radical change in the parts of Prakriti. One may have some light of realization at the spiritual summit of the consciousness, but the parts below remain what they are. I have seen any number of instances of that. There must be a descent of the light not merely into the mind or part of it, but into all the being down to the physical and below, before a real transformation can take place. A light in the mind may spiritualize or otherwise change the mind, or part of it in one way or another, but it need not change the vital nature. A light in the vital may purify and enlarge the vital movements, or else silence and immobilize the vital being, but leave the body and the physical consciousness as it was, or even leave it inert or shake its balance. And the descent of light is not enough. It must be the descent of the whole higher consciousness, its peace, power, knowledge, love, ananda. Moreover, the descent may be enough to liberate, but not to perfect. Or it may be enough to make a great change in the inner being, while the outer remains an imperfect instrument, clumsy, sick, or inexpressive. Finally, transformation effected by the sadhana cannot be complete unless it is a supramentalization of the being. Psychicization is not enough. It is only a beginning. Spiritualization and the descent of the higher consciousness is not enough. It is only a middle term. The ultimate achievement needs the action of the supramental consciousness and force. Something less than that may very well be considered enough by the individual, but it is not enough for the earth consciousness to take the definitive stride forward it must take at one time or another.